I'm Claude, 32 years old, and the proud owner of a lake house my grandmother left me when she passed. My sister Rachel was getting married and demanded to use my sanctuary for her wedding venue. When I refused, I never imagined she would destroy $50,000 worth of our grandmother's antiques, poison my dog Maxwell, and try to burn down the only place I've ever felt truly at peace. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever had family betray you like this. Hit subscribe to join me on this wild journey of family drama, and stick around to see how justice finally came knocking. The lake house sits on the edge of Lake Windermere, about 2 hours from the city where I work as an architect. It's not massive or particularly modern, but it has character that no new construction could ever replicate. My grandmother Margaret bought it in the 1940s with my grandfather back when property around the lake was still affordable. The wooden structure has weathered countless storms, both literal and metaphorical, within our family. I remember visiting every summer as a child, watching the sun set over the water, while Grandma Margaret told stories about her youth. The walls of that house absorbed those stories, held them close like they were preserving our family history within their very fibers. When she passed away 3 years ago at the age of 94, I was surprised to learn she had left the property to me. Claude always understood the soul of this place, her will stated. I cried when the lawyer read those words. I had spent countless hours helping her maintain the property as I grew older, repairing the dock, repainting the shutters, learning the quirks of the old plumbing system. While others in the family saw it as a burden, I recognized it as a treasure. The most valuable parts of the house weren't its walls or location, but what Grandma Margaret had filled it with. Over decades, she had collected antiques that spoke to her. A Victorian writing desk where she penned letters to my grandfather during the war. A set of hand-painted china that survived 2 world wars. Crystal decanters that caught the morning light and scattered rainbows across the living room floor. An 18th century grandfather clock that still kept perfect time. Art Deco lamps that cast a warm glow over evening card games. Together, these pieces were valued at around $50,000. But to me, they were priceless. After my divorce 2 years ago, the lake house became my salvation. My ex-wife Amanda and I had been together since college, but slowly grew apart as her career in corporate law consumed her. The divorce was amicable, but left me feeling unmoored. The lake house provided solid ground when I felt like I was drowning. I started spending every weekend there, eventually bringing home a golden retriever puppy I named Maxwell. He quickly became my closest companion, running along the shoreline, swimming in the cool water during summer, and curling up by the fireplace in winter. His presence filled the empty spaces in both the house and my heart. My relationship with my sister Rachel has always been complicated. 4 years younger than me, she grew up as the baby of the family, doted on by our parents, Frank and Diane. While I was expected to be responsible and sensible, Rachel was allowed to be free-spirited and spontaneous. This dynamic created an undercurrent of tension between us from an early age. Rachel resented that Grandma Margaret and I had such a close bond. While I spent weekends helping with repairs and listening to stories, Rachel would be on her phone or complaining about being bored. Yet she always felt entitled to the same level of affection and inheritance. The lake house became a symbol of that perceived injustice in her eyes. Whenever she visited after Grandma's death, she would make comments like, "I always pictured having my wedding here," or, "When you decide to sell this place, I should get first right of refusal." I always brushed these comments off, never taking them seriously. I couldn't imagine how those casual remarks would eventually escalate into something so destructive. After my divorce, I threw myself into my work at the architecture firm. Being able to escape to the lake house on weekends kept me sane through the 60-hour work weeks. I specialized in restoring historic buildings, finding beauty in structures others might tear down. My colleagues often joked that my personal life mirrored my professional passion for rehabilitation and preservation. The lake house sits on 3 acres of land with 100 feet of private shoreline. The main house has 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and an open-concept living and dining area with cathedral ceilings and exposed beams. The large stone fireplace is the centerpiece, with Grandma's antiques arranged thoughtfully throughout the space. Large windows face the lake, and a wraparound porch provides the perfect spot for morning coffee or evening whiskey. I never saw the place as just mine, despite what the deed said. I viewed myself as more of a caretaker, preserving it for future generations. I had even started documenting the history of each antique, creating a catalog so their stories wouldn't be lost. Little did I know that this careful preservation would make the coming destruction all the more painful. The news of Rachel's engagement came during a Sunday dinner at our parents' house. I had driven directly from the Lakehouse with Maxwell snoozing in the back seat of my truck. Rachel had been dating Benjamin for just under a year. He was a successful businessman who owned a chain of high-end fitness centers across the state. "We have an announcement," Rachel declared, standing up and pulling Benjamin to his feet beside her. The large diamond on her left hand caught the light as she raised her glass. "Benjamin proposed last night and I said yes." The table erupted in congratulations. Mom immediately began crying happy tears while Dad clapped Benjamin on the back. I offered sincere congratulations, having met Benjamin several times and finding him to be a decent guy if a bit reserved. "So when's the big day?" Mom asked, already mentally planning. "We're thinking June 10th, Rachel replied. "Just 6 months away." "That's not much time to plan a wedding," I remarked. Rachel waved her hand dismissively. "When you know what you want, planning is easy." The conversation shifted to venues, dresses, and guest lists. Rachel announced they were planning for 200 guests, a number that surprised everyone at the table. 200 people? That's quite the celebration, Dad commented. "Benjamin has a large family and many business associates," Rachel explained, "and we want it to be the event of the season." Benjamin nodded along, though I noticed he seemed less enthusiastic about the grand scale than my sister. As the meal progressed, Rachel detailed her vision: a lakeside ceremony at sunset, dinner under a grand tent dancing under the stars, and a fireworks display over the water. "It sounds beautiful," Mom said. "But have you found a venue that can accommodate all that?" Rachel looked directly at me, a calculated smile forming on her face. "Actually, I was thinking Claude's Lakehouse would be perfect." The table fell silent. All eyes turned to me. "My Lakehouse?" I asked, certain I had misheard. "It's the ideal location," Rachel continued, as if my question had been enthusiastic rather than confused. "The property is large enough for the tent and parking. The backdrop of the lake for photos would be stunning. And it would be so special to have it at a family property." I took a slow sip of water, gathering my thoughts. "Rachel, I don't think that would work." Her smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened slightly. "Why not?" "For starters, the house and property aren't set up for 200 people. The driveway can maybe fit 20 cars. The septic system couldn't handle that many people. And, most importantly, the house is full of Grandma's antiques. Having that many people moving through the space would put them at risk." "We could move the antiques," she countered. "Some of them are built in or too fragile to move," I explained. "And honestly, Maxwell gets anxious around crowds. It would be stressful for him." Rachel's expression darkened. "You're saying no because of your dog." "He's one of several considerations," I replied calmly. "But this is my wedding, Claude. The most important day of my life. I understand that, and I want it to be special. But there are professional venues that would be much better equipped to handle an event of that size." Benjamin placed a hand on Rachel's arm. "He has a point, honey. We looked at Silver Creek Resort, and it was beautiful." Rachel shrugged off his hand. "But it doesn't have the personal connection. Grandma would have wanted me to have my wedding at the Lakehouse." That comment struck a nerve. Rachel, Grandma left the house to me because she knew I would preserve it, not turn it into an event space. "She left it to you because you're the oldest," Rachel snapped. "But she always loved me more." The table fell silent again. Mom looked uncomfortable while Dad cleared his throat. "Maybe we should all take some time to think about this," Mom suggested. "There's nothing to think about," I said firmly. "I'm sorry, Rachel, but the Lakehouse isn't a suitable venue for your wedding." Rachel pushed back from the table. "Unbelievable. You've always been selfish, Claude, but this takes it to a new level." "Rachel, please," Benjamin started, but she cut him off. "No, he needs to hear this. That house should have been shared among all of us. Instead, he gets everything, and he won't even let me use it for one day." Dad attempted to mediate. "Now, Rachel, Claude has valid concerns about the property's limitations." "You always take his side," she accused. "Both of you do." Mom looked hurt. "That's not true, sweetheart. We just want what's best for everyone. Rachel grabbed her purse. What's best would be for Claude to stop being so precious about a house and some old junk, and to support his sister for once. As she stormed out, Benjamin gave an apologetic look to everyone at the table before following her. The sound of her car starting and peeling out of the driveway left an uncomfortable silence in its wake. She'll calm down, Mom said eventually. She's just excited about the wedding and disappointed. Dad looked at me thoughtfully. The Lakehouse is yours, son. You have every right to decide how it's used. But perhaps there's a compromise to be found here. I shook my head. Dad, it's not about being difficult. The property literally cannot accommodate what she's envisioning. And I won't put Grandma's legacy at risk. The rest of the evening was tense. As I drove home with Maxwell, I couldn't shake the feeling that Rachel's request was less about having a meaningful venue and more about laying claim to something that had been given to me instead of her. I hoped the matter was settled, but a nagging feeling told me Rachel wouldn't let this go easily. She never did. 3 days after the disastrous dinner, Benjamin showed up at my office downtown. My assistant Jason looked uncomfortable as he showed Benjamin into my private workspace, overlooking the city skyline. Benjamin, I said, standing to shake his hand. This is unexpected. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important, he replied, glancing at the building plans spread across my drafting table. Just finalizing some details for a historical restoration project. What can I do for you? Benjamin sat in the chair opposite my desk, straightening his tie. I wanted to talk to you about the wedding situation. Man to man. I leaned back in my chair. I appreciate that, but my position hasn't changed. Just hear me out, he said, opening his briefcase. I've put together some proposals that might address your concerns. He laid several documents on my desk. The first was a contract from an event insurance company offering coverage up to $1 million for any property damage. The second was a detailed plan from an event management company showing how they would handle parking, portable restrooms, and crowd flow to minimize impact on the property. We're willing to pay for everything, Benjamin continued. Professional security to ensure no one enters the main house except for immediate family. Movers to temporarily relocate any antiques that can be moved. We'd even pay to put you and Maxwell up at a luxury hotel for the entire weekend. I reviewed the documents, impressed by the thoroughness but still unconvinced. You've clearly put a lot of thought into this. Rachel means everything to me, he said sincerely. I want to give her the wedding of her dreams. I understand that, Benjamin. But there are some things that money can't fix. The emotional value of that house and its contents goes beyond financial compensation. Benjamin leaned forward. What if we increase the insurance coverage? Name your price. It's not about the money, I insisted. Some of those pieces were with my grandmother for 70 years. They're irreplaceable. And honestly, the house itself is my sanctuary. The idea of turning it into a wedding venue, even for a day, feels wrong. This is really important to Rachel, Benjamin pressed. She talks about that Lakehouse all the time. The summers she spent there as a kid, fishing with your grandfather, learning to swim off the dock. I couldn't help but laugh. Benjamin Rachel hated the Lakehouse growing up. She complained about the lack of Wi-Fi, the mosquitoes, the creepy old furniture. She rarely went fishing with Grandpa, and she learned to swim at the community pool, not the lake. Benjamin looked confused. That's not what she told me. I'm not surprised, I said. Rachel has always had a talent for revisionist history, especially when it serves her purposes. He sat back, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. She's been really upset about this. She feels like you're punishing her for some childhood rivalry. This isn't about punishment or rivalry, I explained. It's about respecting boundaries and the reality of what the property can support. I'm sorry, but my answer remains no. Benjamin gathered his documents with a sigh. I had to try. For what it's worth, I understand your position better now. As he stood to leave, I added, for what it's worth, I think you're a good guy, Benjamin. Rachel is lucky to have someone who goes to such lengths for her. After Benjamin left, I thought the matter might finally be resolved. I was wrong. The next morning, my phone began buzzing with text messages from Rachel. Thanks for embarrassing me in front of my fiancé. Benjamin says you called me a liar. You've always been jealous that Grandma loved me more. Everyone thinks you're being ridiculous about this. I muted the conversation and focused on my work, but the barrage continued. Voicemails, emails, even messages to my professional social media accounts. Rachel was nothing if not persistent. Over the next 2 weeks, the situation escalated. Rachel began telling extended family members and mutual friends that I was trying to sabotage her wedding out of bitterness over my divorce. She claimed I was mentally unstable, still grieving Grandma's death and unable to share the family property because of it. Some relatives began calling me, urging me to reconsider. It's just one day, Claude, my aunt, Patricia insisted. Family should come first. My cousin Thomas took my side. Your house, your rules, he said. Rachel needs to respect that. The family was dividing into factions. Sunday dinners at my parents' house became impossible, as Rachel refused to attend if I would be there. Mom called daily, her voice increasingly strained as she tried to mediate a resolution. Can't you just consider it, she pleaded, for the sake of family harmony? Mom, I've made my decision, I responded firmly. Rachel needs to accept it and move on. Dad was more understanding. I've told Rachel she needs to respect your boundaries, he confided during a private lunch. But you know how she gets when she's fixated on something. I did know. Rachel had always been tenacious to the point of obsession when she wanted something, especially something she felt had been unfairly denied to her. My friend Lucas met me for drinks after work one evening, listening patiently as I vented my frustrations. Sounds like classic Rachel, he commented, having known my family for years. Remember when she decided she deserved your car because her commute was longer than yours? I laughed at the memory. She keyed the driver's door when I refused to give her the keys. Lucas's expression turned serious. That's my point, Claude. Rachel has a history of destructive behavior when she doesn't get her way. You need to be careful. What do you think she's going to do? She's 28 now, not 16. Age doesn't always bring maturity, Lucas warned. Just be vigilant. His words proved prophetic. The following weekend, I arrived at the Lakehouse to find Rachel's car in the driveway. She was sitting on the front porch, arms crossed. How did you get here? I demanded, keeping Maxwell in the truck as I approached. I have a key. Remember, Mom gave me the spare for emergencies. This isn't an emergency, I pointed out. And you should have called first. Would you have agreed to see me? She challenged. Probably not, I admitted. Exactly. I wanted to see the space again to understand why you're so against sharing it. It's not about sharing Rachel. It's about protecting it. She followed me inside, her eyes scanning the rooms as if taking inventory. It looks exactly the same as when Grandma was alive. That's the point, I said. I'm preserving her legacy. Rachel ran her fingers along the Victorian writing desk. So many memories in this place. Her sudden sentimentality felt performative and put me on edge. Rachel, why are you really here? I wanted to make one last appeal, she said, turning to face me. Face to face, just the two of us. For the next hour, Rachel cycled through various tactics. She reminisced about childhood memories at the lake, most of which were fabricated or exaggerated. She appealed to my sense of family duty. She tried to make me feel guilty about the divorce, suggesting I was projecting my failed relationship onto her happy one. When none of that worked, she switched to thinly veiled threats. You know, Benjamin and I could just buy this place from you, she said casually. Everyone has a price. The Lakehouse isn't for sale, I stated firmly. Everything's for sale, she countered. And if not now, maybe after something unfortunate happens. Old houses like this are so prone to accidents. The implication sent a chill down my spine. Are you threatening me? Rachel laughed, the sound hollow and forced. Don't be dramatic. I'm just pointing out that hanging on to material things so tightly isn't healthy. As she left, she paused at the door. Think about what I said, Claude. Family should help each other. And it would be a shame if your refusal led to something regrettable. I watched her drive away, Maxwell finally released from the truck and pressing against my leg protectively. That night, I changed all the locks and installed a basic security camera system that uploaded footage to the cloud. Lucas's warning echoed in my mind as I worked. Better safe than sorry. 3 weeks after Rachel's unexpected visit, I had to fly to Chicago for a 3-day architecture conference where I was presenting a paper on sustainable methods for historical restorations. I was reluctant to leave the Lakehouse given the escalating tension with Rachel, but professional obligations couldn't be ignored. My elderly neighbor Harold agreed to check on Maxwell in the house daily. At 76, Harold had lived next door for decades and had been close friends with my grandparents. He had a key for emergencies and knew the property almost as well as I did. "Don't worry about a thing," he assured me as I loaded my suitcase into the car. "Maxwell and I will have a grand time. I've got those dog biscuits he loves. And we'll take our usual walks along the shoreline." Maxwell wagged his tail at the mention of biscuits, seemingly content with the arrangement. I left detailed care instructions, emergency contact numbers, and enough food for twice the duration of my trip. The first 2 days of the conference went smoothly. Harold sent daily text updates with photos of Maxwell looking happy and relaxed. On the third day, just hours before my return flight, my phone rang. Harold's name flashed on the screen. "Hello," I answered, stepping out of a panel discussion. "Claude." Harold's voice was shaking. "You need to come home right now." My stomach dropped. "What's happened? Is Maxwell okay?" "He's alive, but not well. I came over this morning and found him having seizures. I've taken him to the vet." "But Claude, that's not all. The house. What about the house?" I demanded, already moving toward the exit. "Someone broke in. It's destroyed, son. All of your grandmother's things. Smashed. And there was an attempt to start a fire. If I hadn't come when I did, I felt physically ill. I'm on my way." "Which vet has Maxwell?" "Lakeside Animal Hospital. Dr. Andrea is treating him. She thinks he may have been poisoned." I caught the first flight back, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. The 3-hour flight felt like an eternity. I rented a car at the airport and drove straight to the animal hospital, breaking speed limits the entire way. Dr. Andrea met me in the reception area, her expression grave but not defeated. "Maxwell is stabilized," she said after introducing herself. "We've pumped his stomach and are running tests, but based on the symptoms, I strongly suspect rodenticide poisoning." "Rat poison?" I asked, horrified. "Yes. Fortunately, Mr. Harold brought him in quickly. The next 24 hours will be critical, but I'm cautiously optimistic." "Can I see him?" She led me to a treatment room where Maxwell lay on a padded table, an IV in his leg, and monitoring equipment attached to his chest. His usually vibrant golden coat looked dull, and his breathing was shallow. When he saw me, his tail gave the weakest of wags. I gently stroked his head, fighting back tears. "Who would do this to you, buddy?" But I already knew the answer. After spending an hour with Maxwell, I left him in Dr. Andrea's capable hands and drove to the Lakehouse, dreading what I would find. Harold was waiting on the front porch, his weathered face lined with concern. "I called the police," he said as I approached. "They've taken photographs and dusted for fingerprints. They've gone now, but said you should call them when you arrive." I nodded, numbly unable to speak, as I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. Nothing could have prepared me for the devastation. The Victorian writing desk had been hacked apart with what appeared to be an axe. The hand-painted china lay in thousands of tiny shards across the dining room floor. The crystal decanters had been smashed against the walls, leaving glittering fragments embedded in the woodwork. The grandfather clock lay on its face, the intricate mechanism scattered across the room. The Art Deco lamps had been twisted and bent beyond recognition. Every single piece of my grandmother's collection had been systematically destroyed. Not damaged or broken, but pulverized with what must have been hours of dedicated rage. Even worse, there were dark stains on the hardwood floors and furniture, where gasoline had been poured. Burn marks scarred the walls where small fires had been started, but apparently failed to spread. The smell of gasoline and smoke hung in the air despite the windows Harold had opened to ventilate the space. "The security cameras," I asked, my voice hollow. "Torn down and smashed," Harold replied. "But you had that cloud backup, right?" I nodded, pulling out my phone with shaking hands to access the security app. There were alerts for motion detection from the previous night between 2 and 4 in the morning. I opened the first video clip. The night vision footage clearly showed Rachel approaching the front door, accompanied by two women I recognized as her friends from college. They wore dark clothing and carried large bags. Rachel used a key to unlock the door they disappeared inside, and the indoor cameras captured the beginning of the destruction before being disabled. "I need to call the police," I said, my shock giving way to cold anger. The responding officer, Sergeant Miller, arrived within 30 minutes. He reviewed the footage on my phone, took additional photographs, and made detailed notes of my statement and Harold's observations. "The video evidence is pretty damning," Sergeant Miller commented. "Do you know the other two women?" "Yes," I confirmed. "Tiffany North and Brittany Wilson. They've been friends with my sister since college. And you mentioned your dog was poisoned." "Yes, he's at Lakeside Animal Hospital right now. The vet believes it was rat poison." Sergeant Miller's expression darkened. "That elevates this significantly. Property damage is one thing, but animal cruelty is taken very seriously." "Will you arrest them?" Harold asked. "We'll bring them in for questioning first," the officer explained. "Given the evidence, charges will almost certainly follow. Breaking and entering, criminal damage to property, attempted arson, and animal cruelty." After the officer left, I stood in the middle of the destruction, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the loss. It wasn't just the monetary value of $50,000. It was the erasure of tangible connections to my grandmother and our family history. Harold placed a hand on my shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Claude. I should have checked earlier in the night." "This isn't your fault," I assured him. "You saved Maxwell and prevented the house from burning down. I'm grateful you were here." That evening, as I sat in the animal hospital beside Maxwell's kennel, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Claude, the police just left our house. They're saying Rachel destroyed the Lakehouse and poisoned Maxwell. This can't be right." "It is right, Mom," I said wearily. "I have her on video. She broke in last night with her friends and destroyed everything of Grandma's. And Maxwell is fighting for his life because of her." My mother's sob tore through the phone. She swears she didn't do it. She says someone must have stolen her key, that she was home all night with Benjamin. "The security footage doesn't lie," I replied flatly. "And this isn't something that can be fixed with an apology. Grandma's antiques are gone forever, and if Maxwell dies..." I couldn't finish the sentence. "What's going to happen?" Mom asked, her voice small. "That depends on whether I press charges, and right now I fully intend to." After hanging up, I leaned my head against the wall, exhausted beyond words. The vet had said Maxwell's prognosis was improving, but he would need to stay under observation for at least 2 more days. I closed my eyes. The image of Rachel's face on the security footage burned into my mind. The calculated malice required to destroy family heirlooms and poison an innocent animal was unfathomable to me. This wasn't impulsive rage. This was methodical vengeance. For the first time in my life, I felt no connection to my sister. Whatever bond we'd shared through blood or childhood memories had been severed, completely smashed, like the antiques that could never be restored. The day after discovering the destruction, I was back at the animal hospital, sitting beside Maxwell's kennel. His condition had improved slightly overnight, but he remained weak and disoriented. Dr. Andrea assured me that with continued treatment, he had a good chance of full recovery, though it might take weeks. I was absently stroking Maxwell's head when the reception desk called my room. "Mr. Russell, your sister is here, asking to see you and Maxwell." My blood ran cold. "I don't want to see her." "I understand. Should I ask her to leave?" I considered for a moment. "Tell her I'll be out in 5 minutes." I needed to face Rachel. I needed to look her in the eyes and understand how she could do something so monstrous. I found her pacing in the waiting room, looking surprisingly composed in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater. When she saw me, her expression transformed into one of concern. "Claude, this is all a terrible misunderstanding," she began. "I would never hurt Maxwell or destroy Grandma's things." "Save it, Rachel." I cut her off. "I have you on video. The police have you on video. Your key was used to enter the house." "My key was stolen," she insisted. "Someone is trying to frame me." Who? Who would possibly have that level of vendetta against you and me simultaneously?" She faltered momentarily before recovering. I don't know. Maybe someone jealous of the family. Someone who knew about our disagreement over the wedding venue. The only people who knew about that were family and close friends. Exactly, she said, as if I'd proven her point. It could be someone in our circle trying to create drama. I stared at her in disbelief. Do you actually believe what you're saying, or are you just hoping the police will buy it? I'm telling the truth, she insisted, her eyes filling with tears that seemed to appear on command. I would never hurt an animal. You know how much I love dogs. You've never owned a pet in your life, Rachel. You've complained about Maxwell shedding on your clothes every time you visited. That doesn't mean I'd poison him, she exclaimed loud enough that other people in the waiting room turned to look. Lower your voice, I warned. This isn't the place. Where is the place, Claude? You won't answer my calls. Mom and Dad barely speak to me because of your accusations. Benjamin is questioning everything about our relationship. My life is falling apart. Your life. My home was vandalized. My dog was poisoned. Family heirlooms that survived world wars didn't survive your tantrum over a wedding venue. And you're the victim. Rachel's facade cracked slightly, a flash of anger breaking through her performance. You brought this on yourself. All you had to do was share for once in your life. Share, I repeated incredulously. You weren't asking to borrow a sweater, Rachel. You wanted to bring 200 people into a space that can reasonably hold 30. You wanted to move or risk irreplaceable antiques. You wanted to fundamentally alter a property that wasn't yours. It should have been partly mine, she shouted, abandoning all pretense. Grandma had no right to leave everything to you just because you pretended to care about her stupid stories and her dusty old junk. The waiting room fell completely silent. Rachel seemed to realize what she'd said, her hand flying to her mouth. I didn't mean that she backpedaled. I'm just upset and not thinking clearly. No, you meant every word I said quietly. You've finally shown your true colors, Rachel. You never cared about Grandma or her legacy. You just couldn't stand that something valuable went to me instead of you. That's not true, she protested weakly. Then why destroy everything? Why not just steal the antiques and sell them if it was about their value? Why poison Maxwell? He never did anything to you. I told you I didn't do those things. You did, came a male voice from behind us. We both turned to see Benjamin standing in the doorway, his expression a mixture of disgust and sorrow. Benjamin, Rachel gasped. What are you doing here? I followed you, he admitted. I've been worried about your behavior lately. The obsession with the Lakehouse. The late-night phone calls with Tiffany and Brittany. That you wouldn't let me hear. When you suddenly insisted on coming to see Claude and Maxwell, something felt wrong. He walked toward us, stopping a few feet away. I heard everything, Rachel. I heard you admit it was Grandma's stupid stories and dusty old junk. After all your talk about family legacy and meaningful connections to that house. You don't understand, Rachel pleaded. Claude has always been the favorite. Grandma, our parents, everyone always puts him first. So you destroyed $50,000 worth of family heirlooms and tried to kill his dog, Benjamin, asked, his voice breaking. Who are you? Because you're not the woman I thought I was marrying. Rachel's expression hardened. Fine. You want the truth? Yes. I did it. Claude refused to give me the one thing I asked for. So I took away the things he cared about most. Now he knows how it feels to have something precious denied to him. The clinical way she said it sent chills down my spine. There was no remorse, only a cold justification. You need help, Rachel, I said. Professional help. Don't patronize me, she snapped. Not all of us can be perfect like Claude, the responsible older brother, Grandma's favorite, the successful architect with his perfect little lake house. Benjamin stepped between us. This has gone far enough. Rachel, I'm taking you home. We need to talk about what happens next. What do you mean, what happens next? She demanded. I mean our relationship, the wedding, and the legal consequences of what you've done, he replied firmly. Claude has every right to press charges, and from what I've heard, I think he should. Rachel's eyes widened in panic. You can't be serious. Claude, you wouldn't send your own sister to jail, would you? Before I could answer, my parents burst through the door of the waiting room. Mom looked like she'd been crying for hours, and Dad's face was ashen. We just came from the Lakehouse, Dad said, his voice unsteady. How could you do that, Rachel? To your grandmother's things. To Maxwell. Not you too, Rachel groaned. I'm surrounded by people taking Claude's side as usual. This isn't about sides, Mom said, her voice stronger than I expected. This is about right and wrong. And what you did was deeply, unforgivably wrong. So now my whole family is turning against me, Rachel laughed bitterly. Perfect. Just perfect. No one is turning against you, Dad said. But you need to face the consequences of your actions. We think you should get psychological help. Rachel's face contorted with rage. I don't need a shrink. I need a family that doesn't always put Claude's needs above mine. She grabbed her purse and pushed past Benjamin. I'm leaving. Don't follow me. Don't call me. Don't pretend you care about me. As she stormed toward the exit, a police officer entered, blocking her path. Rachel Brooks, he asked. Yes, she replied warily. I'm Officer Jenkins. We need you to come to the station to answer some questions regarding an incident at Lake Windermere last night. Rachel looked back at all of us, her expression a mixture of anger and betrayal. Did you call them? Was this some kind of setup? No, I said truthfully. This is the natural consequence of breaking the law. As the officer escorted Rachel out, I felt no satisfaction, only a profound sadness. My sister's jealousy and entitlement had escalated to the point of criminal destruction. The family I knew was irrevocably changed. Benjamin approached me, extending his hand. I'm so sorry, Claude. I had no idea she was capable of something like this. I shook his hand. Neither did I, really. Not to this extent. The wedding is off, obviously, he said quietly. I can't marry someone who would do this. My parents joined us both, looking decades older than they had at Sunday dinner just weeks ago. What happens now? Mom asked, her voice small. Now we wait to see if Rachel accepts the help she clearly needs, Dad replied. And we support Claude in whatever decision he makes about pressing charges. I looked through the window to the treatment area where Maxwell lay recovering, then thought of the Lakehouse filled with broken memories. I'll press charges, I decided. Not out of vengeance, but because Rachel needs to understand that actions have consequences. Maybe that's the only way she'll get the help she needs. As my family stood in that sterile waiting room, the full weight of what had happened settled over us. Something had broken between us that, like Grandma's antiques, might never be fully repaired. The weeks following Rachel's arrest were a blur of police statements, insurance claims, and veterinary visits. Maxwell's recovery was slow, but steady. After 5 days in the animal hospital, I was able to bring him home, though he needed medication and careful monitoring. His once playful spirit was subdued, his trust in people noticeably shaken. He would startle at sudden movements and refuse to eat unless I was sitting beside him. The Lakehouse felt different, too. The physical damage could be cleaned up, but the emotional violation lingered. I spent countless hours sweeping up broken glass and splintered wood, each piece a painful reminder of what had been lost. Harold and other neighbors came by to help, bringing food and offering support in that quiet, understated way of small communities. Margaret would be heartbroken to see this, Harold said one afternoon, as we sorted through the remains of the grandfather clock, seeing if any pieces could be salvaged. Not because of the things, but because of Rachel. I know, I replied. Grandma always worried about Rachel's sense of entitlement, but I don't think she ever imagined it would lead to this. The insurance company was surprisingly responsive. An adjuster specialized in antiques came to document the losses, though we both knew the monetary compensation could never replace the historical and sentimental value. The final assessment came to $52,000, which would be paid out once the police case was closed. Rachel was charged with breaking and entering criminal damage to property, attempted arson, and animal cruelty. Her friends Tiffany and Brittany, facing similar charges, quickly turned on her, claiming Rachel had masterminded the entire plan and pressured them into participating. They accepted plea deals in exchange for testimony against her. Benjamin called me about 2 weeks after the incident. I've canceled all the wedding arrangements, he said. And I wanted you to know that I've been in contact with Rachel's attorney. I'm encouraging her to accept a plea deal that includes mandatory psychiatric evaluation and treatment. Do you think she will? I asked. I hope so. She's finally starting to realize the severity of what she's done. Being abandoned by Tiffany and Brittany was a wake-up call. She thought they were loyal to her, but they turned on her immediately to save themselves. Have you spoken to her directly? Once he admitted. She's a mess, Claude. Alternating between blaming everyone else and having moments of genuine remorse. I still care about her, but I can't be with someone capable of such calculated destruction. I understood his position. Despite everything, part of me still cared about Rachel, too. She was my sister, and our shared childhood couldn't be erased, even by her worst actions. My parents were struggling to process everything. Mom seemed to age overnight, the stress etching new lines into her face. Dad became quieter, spending hours in his workshop building things. No one needed finding solace in the creation process, just as I did in my architectural work. We failed her somehow, Mom said during one of her visits to the Lakehouse. Where did all that anger and entitlement come from? You didn't fail her, I assured her, though I wasn't entirely convinced myself. Some people just develop a distorted view of what they deserve from life. One unexpected bright spot emerged from the tragedy. As news of what happened spread through the community, people began bringing me items that my grandmother had given them over the years. A serving platter she'd loaned to a neighbor for a Christmas party 30 years ago and told them to keep. A hand-knitted Afghan she'd made for a family when their son was ill. Small trinkets and keepsakes she'd gifted to friends and neighbors. She would want you to have this back now became a common phrase as these items returned home. Each one came with a story about Margaret's kindness, creating a patchwork history of her generosity that I hadn't fully appreciated before. As I sorted through the debris in Grandma's bedroom, something caught my eye beneath the shattered remains of her jewelry box. A small leather-bound book had survived the destruction, protected by falling behind the dresser. It was her journal from the last 5 years of her life. That night, after Maxwell had fallen asleep beside me on the couch, I began reading. Most entries were mundane observations about the weather notes, about visitors, or reflections on books she was reading. But scattered throughout were mentions of family visits, including observations about Rachel and me. Claude came by today to fix the dock. One entry read, "Such a thoughtful boy, always has been. He understands the value of this place. Not just the property, but the memories it holds. I worry about leaving it to him knowing how Rachel might react, but he's the only one who will preserve it as it should be." Another entry dated just months before her death was more direct. "Rachel visited today, first time in nearly a year. Spent the entire time on her phone or complaining about the lack of entertainment. Asked pointed questions about my will, though she tried to be subtle. I fear her sense of entitlement has only grown worse with age. Claude suggests family therapy, but Frank and Diane resist the idea, still believing she'll grow out of it. I pray he's wrong about how far she might go when disappointment inevitably comes." A chill ran through me as I read those words. Grandma had seen the warning signs, had perhaps even anticipated something like this happening, though surely not to this extent. 3 months after the incident, Rachel accepted a plea deal. She would serve 6 months in a minimum security facility, followed by 2 years of probation. The agreement included mandatory psychiatric treatment and anger management counseling. She was also required to pay restitution, though the insurance had already covered most of the financial loss. Before beginning her sentence, Rachel asked to meet with me. Against the advice of friends and even my parents, I agreed to see her at a neutral location, a quiet cafe in town. She looked smaller somehow. Her designer clothes replaced by jeans and a plain sweater, her usually perfect makeup minimal. When she spoke, her voice lacked its usual confidence. "I know sorry isn't enough," she began, "but I am sorry, Claude. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to hear that." "What happened, Rachel?" I asked. "How did we get here?" She stared into her coffee cup. "The therapist says I have narcissistic tendencies and unresolved childhood jealousy issues. That sounds like psychobabble, but the more we talk, the more I see the pattern. I've always felt like I deserved what you had, that life was unfair, because you got things I didn't. But we had the same opportunities, I pointed out. The same parents, the same education options. Logically, yes. But I never saw it that way. I always felt like you were the favorite, the responsible one, the successful one. The Lakehouse was just the final proof that everyone valued you more. So you decided to destroy what I valued most. I wasn't thinking clearly, she admitted. It started as just wanting to take some of the antiques to hurt you like I felt hurt. But once we were there, something snapped. Tiffany suggested we really make you pay, and suddenly we were smashing everything. It felt powerful in the moment, like I was finally in control. And Maxwell, he's an innocent animal, Rachel. Tears filled her eyes. That was Brittany's idea. She said it would really break you. I didn't pour the poison myself, but I didn't stop her either. I'm so ashamed of that now. I wasn't sure I believed her attempt to shift blame for Maxwell's poisoning, but at least she was admitting to her role in the destruction. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, she continued. Just a chance someday to try to make amends, after I've done the work in therapy and served my time. I couldn't offer false hope. I don't know if our relationship can ever be repaired, Rachel. Trust once broken this thoroughly is nearly impossible to rebuild. She nodded, accepting this. I understand. For what it's worth, I am getting help now. Real help. As she left to begin her sentence the following day, I felt neither satisfaction nor closure. Just a hollow acceptance that the sister I knew was gone, replaced by someone I might never truly understand or trust again. 6 months passed. Spring arrived at the Lakehouse, bringing with it a sense of renewal. Maxwell had made a complete physical recovery, though he remained more cautious around strangers than before. The Lakehouse had been cleaned and repaired, though it would never be the same without Grandma's collection of antiques. I had used some of the insurance money to commission custom bookcases installed in the living room to display the returned items from neighbors and the photographs I'd thankfully digitized years earlier. It wasn't the same as having the original pieces, but it honored the spirit of what Grandma had created. The most unexpected development in my life was my relationship with Dr. Andrea, who had saved Maxwell's life. What began as grateful updates on his recovery evolved into coffee meetings, then dinner dates, and eventually something much deeper. Andrea understood trauma, both animal and human, and never rushed me through the complex emotions I was processing. You're allowed to still love your sister while hating what she did, she told me one evening as we sat on the dock watching the sunset over the lake. Family relationships aren't all-or-nothing propositions. I'm not sure I do still love her, I admitted. But I hope she finds peace for her own sake. Rachel had completed her 6 months in the minimum security facility and was now in intensive outpatient therapy. My parents, who visited her regularly, reported that she seemed genuinely committed to understanding her actions and making changes. She had cut ties with Tiffany and Brittany, recognizing the toxic influence they'd had on her worst impulses. Benjamin had moved to another state for work, making a clean break from the relationship and the painful memories. He sent a letter before leaving thanking me for my understanding and expressing his hope that both Rachel and I would find healing. The family was slowly mending. Sunday dinners had resumed, though Rachel did not attend. Mom and Dad had finally sought therapy themselves, working through their feelings of guilt and examining the parenting dynamics that might have contributed to Rachel's sense of entitlement. One cool autumn morning, I was sorting through a box of old photographs when I found a picture I'd forgotten existed. It showed Rachel and me as children, maybe 8 and 4, sitting on the Lakehouse dock with our fishing poles, laughing at something out of frame. Despite everything, I smiled at the memory. My phone rang. It was Rachel calling from her outpatient facility for our monthly check-in. These calls had been her idea, a small step toward whatever our relationship might become in the future. "How's Maxwell?" she asked, after we exchanged pleasantries. "He's good. Back to chasing squirrels and swimming every chance he gets. And the house. Different, but still home. Some things can't be replaced, but I'm finding new ways to honor Grandma's memory. I've been thinking a lot about her lately," Rachel said, "about how I never really appreciated her while she was alive. Too busy looking at what she gave to others instead of what she tried to give to me." It was the most insightful thing I'd heard her say in years. "The therapist says I need to practice gratitude," she continued. "So I wanted to tell you that I'm grateful you're willing to talk to me at all after what I did. It's a process, Rachel. For both of us. After we hung up, I sat on the porch swing with Maxwell beside me, contemplating the journey of the past year. The destruction had been devastating, but from it had come unexpected gifts, a stronger sense of community, a deeper understanding of family dynamics, a meaningful new relationship, and perhaps even the beginning of Rachel's healing. I'd learned the hard way about the importance of boundaries. That saying no doesn't make you selfish. That family obligations have limits, and healthy relationships require respect for those limits. Most importantly, I'd learned that while physical objects can be destroyed, the memories and values they represent endure. Andrea joined me on the porch later that afternoon, bringing coffee and her quiet understanding. Maxwell immediately moved to make room for her on the swing. "Penny, for your thoughts?" she asked, handing me a steaming mug. "Just reflecting on how spaces shape us," I replied. "This house has witnessed joy and pain, celebration and destruction. Yet it stands adapted but not defeated. Much like its owner," she observed with a smile. As the sun began to set over the lake, casting golden light across the water, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for months. The Lakehouse would never be exactly as Grandma had left it. But perhaps that was okay. Life moves forward, adapting to loss and finding new expressions of what matters most. Sometimes I said more to myself than to Andrea, houses aren't just places we live in, but places where we learn how to protect our souls. And in the process, we might find a new kind of family, not defined by blood, but by respect, love, and healthy boundaries. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did you handle the fallout? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Family dynamics can be incredibly challenging, and sometimes sharing our stories helps others feel less alone in their struggles. If you found this story meaningful, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to protect your peace, even from those closest to you. Thank you for listening, and remember that healing is rarely a straight line, but always a worthwhile journey.